on repeat for every week. That was Aura, the Reverend, closing it out. That sounds a lot like Queensryche to me in some of that, so that was kind of cool in that song. Anywho, next topic up is one that Neko found actually, a couple weeks ago, I think, but we just haven't gotten around to talking about it. But not anything new when it comes to entertainment and
it comes to the world.
Yeah,
like, all right,
gatekeeping.
Let's
the
just
elitists.
say you're playing Pokemon. And you're really happy you're playing Pokemon, and you have your Pokemon deck, and somebody comes up to you and takes your deck and throws it on the ground and is like, bitch, what Pokemon do you know about except for Pikachu? The reason I bring this up, and I know that sounds kind of stupid and extreme, is Loudwire published this article, I think, about 14 days ago about metal gatekeeping. And I never really realized it because DJ Anubis and I, all of our friends are just kind of cool. And if I would, let's just say I'm wearing my Cannibal Corpse t-shirt, and then my friend...
Name 4 songs.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but our friends...
That actually came up in the article.
Our friends don't do that. Our friends are like, oh my god, I love your Cannibal Corpse t-shirt. And I'll be like, oh my god, I love your Obituary t-shirt. And our friends recognize metal, rock, pop. I could wear a Michael Jackson t-shirt to a metal concert, and our friends would be like, Smooth Criminal, Thriller, great albums. But what we're finding now in the modern era is people are getting really snobby about their metal. And metal has always been like the alternative lifestyle, right? Isn't that, I mean, even you, me and you, 80s, you, 90s, me, we always felt that. We were always kind of like, we love metal, we love alternative, we love, punk and thrash and et cetera, and everybody else is like, oh, I love club music. We have always kind of been around that, where this will go good with this. Fugazi. I know 0 songs from Fugazi.
I had a couple tapes that I never listened to at one point.
But Fugazi, when I was in the 90s, everybody would wear this shirt that says, "This is not a Fugazi shirt." And I'm like, I don't know Fugazi. And they were like, you don't know. That is gatekeeping.
Yeah. Yeah, this article that you brought up to my attention, like, it touches on a lot of the points that you just made and a lot of points that we're going to get to, but I took issue with a couple things, and they're kind of minor, but for instance, one thing they bring up is about when, back in the 80s, when Lars Ulrich threw darts at Kip Winger's photo in Metallica's Live Shit, Binge, and Purge. So it was a picture of Kip Winger, and Lars was chucking darts at it. And they said here the message was clear: you're either with us or against us. That's not entirely true, and I'm going to say this because Neko and I have watched plenty of documentaries about 80s metal scene, from thrash to hard rock to death metal to whatever, and it's not a secret that during that time the scenes themselves were at war. Like, they didn't, it wasn't like there was all this all-out fighting, but we talk about it all the time how Metallica was in the LA scene. They're like, we don't really want to play down here because it's nothing but the glam rock stuff. So they are all going up to San Francisco to play with the thrash bands up there because it was more their scene. We talked about L7 going to Seattle. So yeah, there was thrash, and even in the late 80s and early 90s when death became a thing, they were mocking a lot of the glam stuff. I mean, Beavis and Butthead did it, but it's not necessarily about them saying you're with us or against us. It's personal taste. So again, another point they try to make is about, if you don't like a band after a certain album, that you're gatekeeping. Like, that's not true either. Like, if I say to you, I love Metallica up until Injustice for All. Everything after that is pretty much rock music to me. That's just an opinion. That's not me saying, oh, you can't like what they're doing. It's just me saying that I don't prefer to listen to anything post Injustice for All because that's more my speed.
But what this article also is saying is there is a minority that are kind of like being assholes.
Oh yeah, and we get that, we see that even in black metal's notorious for that shit. Especially
what do you know about XYZ? Like,
well, we saw it with Merker, and it's that woman who I can't remember her name, unfortunately. She used to do like this pop band, but she was really much into the black metal scene, so she made her own. She became a solo artist doing Merker, and she gained like a lot of attention. She's actually really good with what she's doing, but she adds different elements into her black metal that isn't sitting right with the traditional black metal elitists. The gatekeepers are like, that's not black metal. It's like,
we run into that with Demue though,
right?
Because they started out very black metal, but then they got symphonic, and then the elitists are like, oh no, and then that's where I was like loving Demue. I'm like, oh my god, they're so creative. And what was the name of that album?
Which one? Enthroned Darkness Triumphant or Death Cult Armageddon?
Death Cult Armageddon.
Yeah.
That one turned me into Demue. And everybody else is like, Demue is an original black metal album. Demue is black, etc. And for me, I heard some older Demue, and I said to DJ Anubis, like, I really didn't like it. Sorry.
Yeah,
and the one song I said I didn't like, you were really shocked because you're like, this is one of their like top songs, and I'm like, I didn't like it. But the Death Cult Armageddon shit, when it got like some hype to it,
Progenies of the Great Apocalypse.
Yes. I was just like, how creative are they? And I feel like as fans, a lot of people are not willing to be like, how creative are they? I mean,
but here's a point.
Me. If you want to get creative, and I hear it, and I'm like, that's beautiful, but there are fans who are like, they're straying away.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, going back to the Cannibal Corpse, like she's wearing a Cannibal Corpse shirt right now. We've seen Cannibal Corpse a couple times in concert, probably 2 or 3 times. Very good. We enjoy them. I own material from them. I like them. I can only tell you right now one song that I know off the top of my head, and that's Hammer Smash Face. That's like their most popular one from Ace Ventura and everything. That does not mean I don't know what I'm fucking talking about. It means I like Cannibal Corpse, but not enough to tell you that I spend hours upon hours listening to this. Same with her. We all have bands that we know. I can go back to the 80s and give you tons of Metallica or Megadeth songs that I like. And one reason for a lot of that is in the 80s, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have... my catalog of stuff that I listened to was very small. Because that's all I knew. Like, I didn't really have the money as a teen to go and buy all the CDs. It was really the 90s where I started to explore a lot of that and became familiar with other bands. Probably the same with like grunge. Like, there's only a handful of bands. Like, I could sit there and say, okay, Nirvana, Nine Inch Nails, and Pearl Jam. I can give you songs off those early albums. I couldn't tell you anything after that. Devin, I can tell you tons of songs I love by him. Or it's all about who you listen to the most. There are tons of death metal bands, thrash bands that I listen to that right off the top of my head I could not tell you a song. But I have tons of shit on my phone because I know that's part of my problem. Like, if I were to sit there and say, okay, I want to go on to the gym or play racquetball listening to this, what songs do I want to hear? Well, I don't want to do that. I just want to pile songs on my phone, so as I'm working or going to play racquetball, I can sit there and say, okay, I'm getting more and more familiar with this song. People take offense to that sometimes because they're like, well, why don't you say you listen to them and you play them? Dude, you don't understand. I listen to like 20 or 30 albums every single week, and I discover new bands that I like might not be my favorite of the year, but they may have like 5 to 7 songs I really like, and I will say, okay, I'm gonna throw these on my phone because I really dig these. But down the road, if I'm gonna sit there and say, can I name them all? No, you're asking me to name thousands of songs, and sometimes from bands that like I like, but I just don't get. They're not my favorite. I like Cannibal Corpse. They're not my favorite. If I'm going death metal, give me Obituary or Nocturnus or Morbid Angel. Anything else that I'm more comfortable with in that terms. Like, so people who gatekeep that kind of shit are stupid. It just don't.
I think this article really was trying to shine a light on, like, the metal world is kind of already the alternative world. So inside your alternative, like, black sheep world, why would you say to somebody like, hey, you're wearing a Nocturnus t-shirt, name 3 albums from them, and you're like, I really like the band, I saw them a couple of years ago. That's what kind of blows me away, because between you and I mean, we're older than most people going to concerts now, and I mean, the shirt I'm wearing in particular, it looks like a soccer/football, soccer football shirt. We purchased it in 2016, and it was my Bloody Valentine, remember that? And I was like, I have to have this shirt. It's a red. It's got the ringers. It looks like a
jersey almost.
Yeah. So a lot of times for me, if I can't name a song by the band, it's not always because I don't appreciate the band. It's because I watched the band and they were phenomenal, and then I'm like,
a good example is, I know Neko likes Black Crown Initiative, but she doesn't always remember the song. So
no, I don't, and I'm like, and I hum the songs to him.
So again, she's legit. She's a legit metal fan. There should be no questioning that. And going back to my time as a teen in the 80s, like, I dealt with a lot of the gatekeeping because I started out listening to Van Halen, Rat, and Motley Crue. I really love those bands, even now. But even in my late teens, when I was starting to kind of get familiar with some of the heavier stuff, some of those guys were like, oh, wait, so you like Death, but then you're wearing a Rat shirt?
Like, and you like Van Halen?
Yeah. So I think at that point, I was kind of like, I learned very early on that, like, the gatekeeping just was kind of stupid to me. So early when it came down to it, by the time 90s came around, I remember specifically hanging with some because in Maryland there's not a lot of metalheads in terms of where I was locally in Arnold, where I was initially at. I did find a couple that were into the heavier stuff like I was, so we were in my house at the time with my parents, and like I was in my room, and the guy was checking out my tapes at the time, and I had them strung out like on the bed with the dash, the headboard.
Yeah.
And he's going through and he's like, okay, we got Obituary, Nocturnus. Wait, what? Prince, Purple Rain? What? And I'm like, yes,
but
dude.
Prince is a beautiful musician.
Well, and that's the thing I discovered now. Like, this article holds a lot of truth, but there's also a lot of people out there, a lot of bands, artists, and whoever, they actually have diverse musical tastes. You would be surprised, and we talked about it when we did the whole thing with the Flock of Seagulls thing, was Fear Factory is influenced easily by guys like Gary Newman, and that's not metal, dude. I mean, Gary's doing dark wave stuff now compared to what he used to do with the pop stuff, but that's not metal. And so I kind of learned in early 2000 also when I went with John from No Moss at the time. He wasn't in that band at the time, but we went up to Pennsylvania for the Tattoo to Earth festival. And Sepultura was playing there. This was after, post-Max and everything. But the headlines were Slayer and Slipknot. And that particular night, they were alternating. That particular night, Slayer was opening, basically undercarding for Slipknot. And so, really, I was kind of like, well, I've seen Slipknot. I'm not the biggest fan. I'm just going to go wait in the van while you guys... And most of us went to the van. We were just kind of like, we were done after Slayer. It was like, who's going to follow that up? You know, Slipknot was a big band, still is. I think Lurch, who isn't with us anymore, God bless him, but he was the one that kind of stayed behind because he liked Slipknot. But again, that's where I learned when I was reading about these guys, when it started to come out in the internet and stuff, that like Slayer really likes Slipknot's music. So you go over to the festivals over in Europe and you see their cards all the time, their posters, and you're like, look at all the various bands I've got, and you can have Breaking Benjamin playing one night and then Emperor playing the next. And, you know, I don't know how it is with their fans out there, like in terms of like how much shit gets talked. But for the most part, it doesn't seem like people give a shit. They just kind of like, okay, I'm not going to watch this band.